Good morning, my name is Chris Fox, and welcome to the second video in the 15-day novel challenge. Today we are covering days, wow, let's see if I can do this math in my head. So it was 1 through 4 before, 5 through 9. 5 through 9. I said good morning, but it actually is evening right now. It's about 7 p.m. my time, and I'm recording the intro to the video after all the other segments are done. So for me right now, it is Thursday night, and I've been working all week on this book. You're going to see how that work went and sort of what chapters got created. Spoilers, I'm pretty much at the end of the first draft, so I did make some tremendous progress this week, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I am very tired. I've been doing a lot of work, as you'll hear in the various segments, that isn't related to the 15-day novel challenge. I had some consulting calls this week, and I have other projects that I'm working on, so it's been nuts. It really has. This is kind of a testament to what you can accomplish if you buckle down and just do it. It doesn't matter that I have all this stuff going on. You know, you'll see on Wednesday, it didn't matter that I had, 3 or 4 hours of extra work to do. I got my words down anyway. I just started early and made sure that it happened. And you'll get to see sort of as I persevere this week. And I'm very proud of what I'm turning out. This book certainly isn't going to be for everybody, but its intended audience, I'm hoping, will find it amusing. And I'm already starting to see some of the stuff that I'm going to change in the editing process. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump into the video. It is long, I know. Feel free to pause that as you're finishing each given day. It's a lot, but hopefully you find this useful. If there are comments or questions, please leave those in the comments below. If you're not comfortable with that and you're on the mailing list, feel free to email me, whatever you need to do. But I'd love to hear whatever feedback you have. The questions from the first video were tremendously useful and helped me formulate this. And I really appreciate the support, guys, because, as you know, this is not super easy, no matter how many times I do it. But I am having a good time, and it's nice to be sort of back in fighting form as far as the writing goes. So anyway, guys, let's jump into the first segment, and you'll see how this week went. Okay, so as you can see, we are at the end of day 5. This, for me, is the end of a very long work week. I am really tired. It is, as you can see, 3:22 p.m. Took me a long time today to finish my words. And granted, I had some other stuff going on. I was actually publishing the first video, which was pretty challenging. That long of a video, it's the first time Mary and I have done something like that, so we ran into some hiccups, and we actually didn't get it posted until late in the afternoon. I was pretty tired, and that was all today. So in any case, as you can see, I did in fact hit that 25,000 words without too much trouble. And I'm going to jump back. Yeah, here we go. So Burton to the Rescue was the first chapter that I worked on. You've already seen the first half of this, but the second half has been added. The basic premise is that Burton is barking at these kittens and scaring them, and so they can't use their abilities to kill the adventurers. And then Bert goes and gets a torch and uses it to burn the mummy, so he's distracted, so our other protagonist can sneak out of the room. So basically, Bert to the rescue. And this is really, really fun to write. I really enjoy Bert as a protagonist because he's so small and unassuming. Next chapter was Riddle Level, and I don't know what the actual name of this is going to be, but basically what I'd said to myself is, okay, I've got to have sort of a level that has mental challenges. And since I made some decisions about the Dark Lord, I was able to set that up in a way that I feel fits the theme. And the change that I made there is I changed the Dark Lord from the Dark Lord Bella to the Dark Lord Count. And when I say Count, think Sesame Street, Count. I believe his name is Count Von Count on Sesame Street. So I'm doing a character that's inspired by that. And that's our Dark Lord. And so I figured the last level that they'd have to get through would be numeric sort of riddles that the Count would approve of, because he likes counting. And so you can see I did a little research here. So for the first one, I came up with prime numbers. And for the second one, I just did the square of numbers. This was a suggestion from my wife. I had a more complicated version of this, but making it simple makes a lot of sense. And the third one, of course, is a Fibonacci sequence, which Kit will explain through the course of the chapter. So I'll scroll down and you guys can see how this actually played out. But basically, this is Kit's moment to shine. She's gotten that well actually trope, so she is now super intelligent. She has absolutely no problem getting through all 3 of these challenges and easily supplies the answer. And in the process, she gets to embarrass Master White as the necromancer is insisting on being called. So the necromancer gets very angry at her as a result because she shows him up, and she's a little worried about that, but is also quite happy that she's able to show him up because she easily plugs in the answers for all three of these, as you can see. Keep scrolling. You can see Sir Patrick getting angry with White. One of my more amusing, off the cuff, this just came to me. I tried to decide what magical university did Kit go to, and I decided that's Frogworks. And then she finishes it up. We get to the end, and they've opened the door. They've sort of beaten the challenge. And then the last level is the Dark Lord Count himself. Here is my walkthrough, which, as you can see, is quite lengthy. I'll scroll down slowly through this. Some of this ends up in the next chapter, but enough of it's here that it still makes sense. And this is from Bert's perspective. He's angry at White for stealing credit because Bert saved them in the last challenge, but White took credit and said, oh, it's me, I was the one that saved us from the mummy, so Bert's not overly fond of him. So Bert's plan, and he executes it perfectly here, is while they are fighting the Dark Lord, he casually walks around the side of the room, and he goes over and he picks up all the loot, and he's gathering all of the gold and all of the gems while the adventuring party is fighting the Dark Lord, because he correctly reasons that they're all going to be busy, no one's going to see him, and so this is his chance. So he stuffs his backpack full of gems and gold, but it's too heavy, and so he has Beau Burton carry it for him, and the two of them quietly sneak out while, while the adventurers are still in the middle of their combat. The last chapter in the Road of Trials is Kit and party fighting the Dark Lord, and you can see sort of here how this plays out. She's considering, what to do. She has a spell called Phantasmal Killer, and as you guys, if you've watched the plotting videos, know, I wanted to work in the Banshee Wilhelm because, the famous Wilhelm scream, and this proved to be my chance to do it. So I had her Phantasmal Killer scroll summon Wilhelm the Banshee, and we get to see this Wilhelm scream, which, I've been dying to work into the book. And then I made another kind of radical switch towards the end. My original outline of the plot was that in this chapter, they were going to kill the Count, and Master White was going to get the trope and become the new Dark Lord. And I've since modified the plot, so instead, Bert's going to accidentally take it when he takes the treasure. So the Count wasn't actually using the trope, yet it's stashed in his treasure. Bert makes off with it, and I figured that would make for some more interesting hijinks for the rest of the plot. Here is the writing itself. I'll scroll down so you guys can see what's happening here. This is a kind of tongue-in-cheek comedy. Please forgive me for the comedic bit about there are four lights. There are four lights! With Jean-Luc Picard, played by Patrick Stewart. That was a very iconic moment back in the late 80s, early 90s for that character, and so most sci-fi and fantasy geeks are familiar with the there are four lights, where he's being tortured. And I work that into the scene. So the people who don't know it probably won't think too much of it, and I'm hoping that people that do recognize it will chuckle. You can see that White is panicking and showing that he's just not very good in combat, and he's, kind of a coward. And then she, of course, summons Wilhelm, and, Wilhelm does his thing, and we see the Wilhelm scream. They are able to overcome the Count, and it all feels a little easier than Kit was expecting. And White agrees, and it is in that moment that they realize that the Dark Lord trope is not there, and that he would have been invincible if he had had it, and clearly he doesn't. So they search around, and they realize that most of the treasure's been stolen, and of course Kit, having just met Bert, quickly pieces together that he's probably the one that took it. And that's where I end the chapter. And I did one more, which is in the Meet the Goddess phase. Bert finally makes it to the monster shop to buy his warg mount. He's like, all right, I've got my money. And as you guys know from Dan Harmon's Story Circle, in Meet the Goddess, you typically give your character what it is they originally wanted, but you also show them why that's not what they really wanted. So this is where Bert gets what he wants. He's got his gold now, and he wants to purchase his mount, and he does. But then he sees that Beau Burton is very sad because Beau Burton wants to be his mount, and because Beau Burton's his little buddy, and they become really good friends. Bert sort of acquiesces and doesn't buy the warg mount and agrees to stick with Beau Burton. And the chapter ends with the shopkeeper offering to let Bert stay there as long as he'd like, and Bert trying to decide what he's going to do with the money, which we'll cover in the next section of the plotting. Anyway, that takes me to the end of day 5. It is only 3:30. I feel like I have been working much longer than that. I started at about 6 this morning. I'm pretty tired. It is exhausting. And this is where I think the way that the challenge is structured is smarter this year than it was when I first started. In the 21-day novel challenge, I didn't have a choice. Tomorrow I was going to have to get up and write another 5,000 words. But the way I've structured this challenge, I've got Saturday and Sunday off. I am going to close the Scrivener document when I am done recording this video, and I am not going to open it again until Monday morning. So over the weekend, I will do lots and lots of thinking about the plot. And then Monday morning, the first thing I'll do for like the first hour or so is work on the outline and kind of integrate notes that I think of over the weekend. But I won't work on the book actively at all. And this is intentional. I'm trying to sort of let my subconscious do the heavy lifting and generate some stuff. And so I guess we'll see on Monday how that looks. You're going to see it right now. We're going to jump into Monday's segment.
Okay, so I figured it was time to show a little bit of my face. I just rewatched the segment that I just recorded that you've just seen, so that was day 5. And you can see in that segment just how exhausted I sort of am. It's day 5, and I've been working hard all week, and I'm tired, and I'm super excited for Saturday as a break. And so what I did this weekend is nothing. Nothing Burt related. I did a lot of work on the role-playing game, and I messed around, and I played some Civilization a little bit, and I watched some TV with the family, and I cleared out the massive pile of emails that I had, and I did some other stuff, but I didn't actually work on Burt, and this was very, very intentional. It was sort of an experiment. I talk a lot about the subconscious and the fact that it's working all of the time, whether we're aware of it or not, just constantly as we're observing things. And so what happened is over the weekend, all these ideas percolated, and I kind of knew where the plot was going and what I wanted to do with Burt. And then what I did, it was 5 a.m., as I always do. I woke up and I went to the gym, and I worked out for an hour, and I sort of thought about, okay, what am I going to do with Burt today? And I went over the chapters in my head, and then I sat down, and this only took like 15 minutes, but I just read through the chapters that I'm going to be writing today, and I sort of, corrected and modified and added little bits to the plot, and we'll jump into that in a sec, and I'll show you kind of what I came up with. But the important takeaway for me is just how much more mental energy and excitement that I have after taking the weekend off. I gave myself 2 days to recharge, and that proved to be an enormously smart decision. I'm excited about the writing. I'm ready to tackle the second half of this book. I know kind of where the plot's going and what I want to do. And if you contrast that, if you look at day 6 and 7 of the 21-day novel challenge, that was the Saturday and Sunday. And you can see that pressure starting to build. And by day 8, I'm like, I'm not into it. And I had to power through it. And it took an enormous amount of willpower, but I did finish up the 21-day novel challenge, but it was an exercise in willpower, whereas today is just another work week for me. So the takeaway from this little segment is weekends, taking them off, super smart on my behalf. Really glad that I built those into this challenge. And ultimately, I think it's making for a better book because I had some good ideas over the weekend. So we're going to jump into the recap that I'm going to show you the chapters that I've written for the day, which haven't actually been written as of this time yet. But the next segment you're going to see is those chapters having been written and the summaries that I came up with. So I am going to jump into the writing and get that banged down for you.
Okay, so as you can see, day 6 went really well. I ended up at 30,500 words. 500 words over what I should be at for today. The sprints went really, really well today. Lots of words in each of them, and I was very happy with how the chapters turned out. And as suspected, having the weekend to think about things really crystallized a lot of the plot, and I'm finding that more characters are easy to write, and it's coming together really well. So that's the daily words, still on schedule, as you can see. And as far as the chapters, I did Garbage, Stella, Return to Paradise, and the White Tower, so these 4. You can see here in Garbage that Burt has kind of gotten everything he's wanted. So for those that have watched the Dan Harmon Story Circle video, or for those that haven't, the Meet the Goddess phase is where you are giving your character everything that they were hoping for back in Need. So earlier in the book, when Burt decided that he wanted a mount and he saw Warg Riders and he really wanted to be kind of a rich and a big deal, this is all coming to him now in these next 2 chapters. And you can see here, looking at the description, what's happening. He's waking up in the monster shop, and this guy's been super helpful to him, and he's got a ton of money, and he's given a wagon by the owner of this shop, and Burt takes his cart, which he, ties Beau Burton to, so Beau Burton's kind of like a mule pulling the cart around, and they follow the garbage carts going around town collecting garbage, and Burt's idea is that he wants to go see where this stuff is collected and see if maybe he can buy some of the garbage. That's his goal. So you can see him threading his way through town, and I made this as cute as possible. Beau Burton's getting a little bit larger and is gaining some more personality, and lots of fans are liking him too, so that's a good thing. We get to the end of the chapter. Burt reaches this little building where garbage is collected, effectively the town dump. He's going to go meet with Stella, who is in charge of the town dump currently. And you can see the description here varies a little bit from what I actually wrote, because the previous chapter, as I wrote it, it changed a bit. So you'll notice some differences, but they're minor. So Burt heads inside, meets Stella, who is in his words, a master garbologist. And he comes in and they have a little meeting where she gets to know him, and he offers to buy the dump. And she laughs and asks for what she considers to be an outrageous amount of money. And not only does Burt say yes, but he also offers to pay her more money if she'll stay on and run the place. And so Burt actually buys the town dump so that he can control the flow of garbage into paradise, so that he'll be the biggest, coolest goblin in the area. This is really his dream. He's getting, again, in Meet the Goddess, he's getting what he's always wanted. He's, a rich, powerful goblin, and will soon have the respect of his peers. He is positive. So you can see it ends with, Burt smiled. He liked the sound of boss. Now Burt's the boss. Then the last chapter in that segment, Return to Paradise, he goes back to be with the goblins and to see G-Mayor, Goblin Mayor, plus the War Griders, and to show off how rich he is. And unfortunately for him, he's not validated as much as he wants to be. They're not as impressed as he hopes they will be. But what he tells them is if they all come to Garbage Field, then they are going to see something unusual. Normally, garbage would come in on Wednesdays, and what Burt has done is told them, since he now runs the dump, do it on Tuesday. So he can show them, hey, listen, I control when the garbage shows up. And since their whole livelihood is based on garbage, Burt really is kind of the biggest goblin in town, sort of almost like the mayor now, even though there is a mayor position. And you can see sort of this playing out. The War Griders, still don't respect him. They don't respect Beau Burton or Burt's cart. And he's, a little upset about that, but he supports Beau Burton and thinks Beau Burton is way cooler than these wargs and is very loyal to his mount. One little detail here, you could see, I just was stumped in the flow of things and I didn't want to think about it. So I just put in brackets, awesome description. What I'll do at the end of this, and you'll see more of this in the editing phase, is I actually search for brackets, because that tells me, is there anything left in the book I intended to fix? When what I want to do here is describe the Goblin Mayor, and I wasn't feeling tremendously inspired, and I wanted to keep writing, so I just put this in and kept writing the scene. I'll define what he looks like in the editing. You can see Goblin not super impressed, but we get the sense that he probably will be when he sees what Burt can do. He even gets his mom to come out and see it. His mom likes Beau Burton because the dog treats her with respect, and of course is along for the ride, and then gets to see the garbage rain down, and Burt gets his big happy moment. This is like the literal meeting the goddess. He is as close to his personal paradise as he can get. The last chapter, we're now switching points of view, and I'll probably move this chapter sequentially. Go ahead and put this back here right before garbage. This is Kit in the throne room with Master White and Breakstuff, and they're discussing the fate of the Dark Lord's Tower and what's going to happen to it. And so Kit's sort of along for the ride, and is a little horrified by what she sees here. White is basically seizing power. He summons some of the most powerful wizards in the realm, and she is expected to announce them. Fortunately, she recognizes them all on sight and is able to do that. We have Gondef the White, based on Gandalf. We have Merlin, just as himself. I didn't change that name at all. And then we have Bumbledork, who may or may not have some relation to Dumbledore. And I have the three of them here. And I picked these guys because all of them are very similar. They dress the same. They have the same beards. It's basically an old white guy with a long white beard. That's the archetype that they're sort of filling there in the mentor role. And I thought it'd be funny to have them all there. So the Council of White Wizards is all these tropey wizards that we know from common fiction. They all arrive and have kind of a funny conversation. But the crux of what is happening here is that Master White is consolidating power, and he starts that by saying, okay, let's put me in charge of the Citadel, and you guys will support me. And then he promises he's going to go out and kill all the evil creatures so that this Dark Lord trope that Burt has inadvertently stolen can be recovered. And if it can't be recovered, it won't matter, because if all the monsters are dead, then there's no one to rise as a Dark Lord. And that was the last of the chapters that I finished. again, it went really well. I was very happy with my progress today and with the plotting, and I have a really good idea of what the rest of the book is going to look like. And so what I've got to do, and what you'll see tomorrow, as I mentioned in the previous segment, you're going to see that this is much more fleshed out because I need to spend some time this evening writing out the rest of the plot, which is really easy to do now that I understand who everybody is and what they all want. The conflict is arising very naturally between them. Bert wants some specific things, Kit wants some specific things, and Master White wants some specific things. And those things are not compatible. So someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. And you can see me building this conflict. I just have to write out the specifics of how I want that to play out. And I know the generalized, ideas for that, but it's really taking each of these. Like, you can see in Return, all I've got here is climactic battle. So what I'll want to do is write out a whole series of scenes where Kit recruits Bert and is going to take Bert and some of the other people that we've met throughout, the book, and they're going to gather together and they're going to try and stop the Dark Lord White. I mean, that's, ultimately what we need to achieve here. So I need to write out the chapters between where I'm at and where I can get from there. And that'll take a little time, but again, having an understanding of all these characters and of the plot is making that way easier. And I feel like I've sort of hit the critical mass I need in this week. Probably going to be a little easier than last week was. Anyway, I have other things to take care of, like the billion emails that are piling up. So I'm going to get to that, and we will jump into the next segment. Okay, so we've come to the end of day 7, and as you can see, for the first time, I'm technically behind schedule. My goal for today would have been 35,000 words even. I'm at 34,909, which puts me 91 words away from being where I should be. And I'll show you in a minute why that is. You may be asking yourself, wait a second, Chris, if you look at the clock up here, it says 1:03 p.m. You've got plenty of time. Why aren't you pushing? When we look at the story, you'll see why. So what I did is I did the take and pay today, these 4 chapters, where our heroes are becoming much more active and they're seizing control of their destiny, but they are, of course, paying a story price for doing so. So we start out with Fortress of Doom, where basically the Dark Lord White, or Master White, is sending Sir Patrick to capture the goblins. And when I say capture, I more meant kill and animate their bodies, like make zombies out of them. And he's doing all this so that he can get a minor bonus of some kind. I think I wrote a little bit differently than it says in the description, but just so he can get a minor bonus, he's going to slaughter a whole bunch of innocent, trolls and fairies and orcs and other things in the realm, all under the guise of trying to purify the realm, but it really shows how selfish he is. So it's our first chapter from Sir Patrick's perspective. It may be the only one in the book. By the end, I don't see necessarily a need for another one, although there could be a second one in the return portion. We'll see. But I got to, get into his head a little bit, and you sort of see what he cares about. And interestingly, if you slow down and read this, what I tried to do is utilize larger words to have Sir Patrick's inner monologue just be more cultured and more refined. So if you look at a Bert chapter versus a Kit chapter versus this Sir Patrick chapter, if I'm doing my job right, you should see a very big difference in those tones, basically. They should all sound a little bit different. Bert is very simple, Kit a little bit more advanced, and then Sir Patrick, again, has a whole different air. That should be the way it should go. Anyway, so he reluctantly agrees to do what his master orders and to kill all these races because he didn't have any choice, but he gets pretty upset about it, and he is longing for the day when Master White is overthrown. So we jump into the end of Paradise. This is from Bert's perspective, and Sir Patrick the Death Knight is coming to wipe out the village. And so Bert is seeing this happen and has to make some decisions. Basically, everybody with a character level, that's the Ward Writers and G. Mayer, are going to get killed, and he knows this. And so G. Mayer puts Bert in charge, and he sort of guides the survivors into the Warrens. And then after the goblins are animated, Bert realizes he needs to lead them away from town. So he and Burton get them to follow him outside of town, and they flee north into the hills until the zombies eventually give up in their pursuit. So Bert gets a chance to be a hero, and we see that he's sort of grown up, and he's being more intelligent and responsible than he was in the beginning. He saves his mom, of course, and puts her in charge of the goblins that are running to hide. And chapter ends with him and Burton fleeing. The Dark Lord White Some of these chapter names, by the way, will need to be changed. I didn't work very hard on the names themselves today. And when we get to editing, we'll talk about what all the names are and what makes the most sense. But for this one, Master White is assembling the OLP to tell them of his victories. He sent Patrick out to purge the land and has good news, presumably, and so he's called them together. Kit is present at this meeting, and this is from Kit's point of view. And so obviously she is absolutely horrified by White because White is obviously evil, doing evil things. And she stands up for herself and says, I can't be a part of this anymore. And he gives her a choice. She can either convert to the God knows best and change her alignment to good, or he will exile her. And she, of course, chooses exile. So this is kind of how that chapter plays out. We've got all the other characters like Gondef the White and Merlin, who, of course, needed to produce Excalibur because, reasons. The chapter was fairly fun to write. You can see it playing out here. I'm just going to keep scrolling. Be down to the bottom in a moment. Boom, there we go. And then the last chapter that I wrote today was The Dark Lord Burt, and it was by far my favorite. It was one of the more amusing ones to do in the book. Basically, to sum this whole description up, Burt is going to have to accept the Dark Lord trope. He's going to take it. It's going to give him a plus 12 bonus to intelligence and a whole bunch of spell-like abilities. He'll get power word kills, so he can just point at something and tell it to die. He can dominate monsters. He gets a whole bunch of abilities. And he sort of gets to cheat because normally this would make him evil, but since critters can't have an alignment, doesn't. And he maintains his own state of mind. It doesn't change. And he links back up with Kit. So basically we're setting all the pieces in play for the return, where Burt and Kit are going to have the stuff they need to come back into the town and take down the Dark Lord White. And theoretically to set up Burt to replace him. So you can see how this chapter plays out. I was trying to find ways to make it just a little bit longer, because if I could have done another 90 words, then I would have finished for the day. But, I also didn't want to give it an artificial ending. So there we go. I just finished up, and I had, like I said, 91 words to go. In the return, you can see here, assembling the team. This isn't a typical chapter breakdown. This is sort of a brain dump where I thought about, okay, what is their plan to take down White? And I came up with that here. And so I decided these were the necessary steps. I thought about what chapters would need to be written. And it's looking like we're probably going to need 4 chapters-ish to take this stuff and play it out. So I'm going to have to write the component sub-chapters based on this information. So this assembling the team will get deleted. And then I'll write 4 or 5 chapter placeholders that'll cover these events. And then I'll flesh out the climactic battle. And that's pretty much the book. So I'm going to guess 8 to 10 more chapters need to be written in this area, and I'm going to flesh the placeholders out today, so that'll be ready to go for tomorrow morning. And that's going to take me a while. It's going to take me a couple of hours of serious, difficult work, and I'm already pretty tired. I struggled with the words today. It was definitely harder today than it was yesterday. Part of that was because I had to do more plotting. Part of it just tired, didn't sleep as well. We have off days like that, but I still get the words down. So anyway, I'm going to get to the plotting now. I'm going to take care of that. In the next segment you see, you'll get to see how it's different, and we'll look at Wednesday's recount. But if things go really well, I might actually finish this early. And worst case scenario, I'm very confident that I can finish this first draft by Friday. Okay, so we have reached the end of day 8. And as you can see, I did hit my goal today and got up over 40,000 words. But man, today was really hard. The crux of the issue was I had a phone call at 11 o'clock and another one at 2 o'clock. These were coaching calls that I had set up, and they're full classes, so I had to kind of prepare for a group of people. So having those in the same day that I was also trying to do the challenge and record the video, and I've got to organize a promo for Tech Mage in 2 weeks, all of this stuff at once on one day, it is really tiring, and man, am I exhausted. But it's 4:15. I'm going to knock off probably a little bit after this. I'll take a break and watch some TV. And then maybe I'll come back out tonight when I've got a little more energy and do some plotting for tomorrow. And as you can see, looking at the book here, we're near the end. We're near the end of this book. We're definitely into the tail end. I knocked out 4 chapters today, few of which don't even have chapter titles yet. I need to add those sometime in the near future. The description is short, as you can see. They're sneaking back into town now, and they are worried that they're going to be discovered by Master White. They're passing clustered of zombified elves who we know were slaughtered recently, and we're sort of seeing some of the changes to the town and why we need to overthrow Master White. I'm going to keep scrolling here so you can read the chapter. Not terribly long. This one was about 1,200 words long, but they make it into town. They make it back to the monster shop where Bert acquired Burton. They talk to the shopkeeper who agrees to allow them to stay because no one likes Master White, and he's all about seeing Master White get overthrown. So they discuss their plans, and Bert says that he can go get some information on how to get in. All he has to do is go talk to the slug that we met early on in the book. And so at the end of the chapter, Kit is going to stay, and Bert heads to meet the slug. He takes Burton with him. You can see in my description here, he tracks down the slug, and this mostly, followed it very closely. But what I'm trying to capture here is Bert adjusting to his new trope. He's got the Dark Lord trope. It gave him a huge burst to intelligence. He's now one of the smartest people alive. And I'm trying to embody, what would that be like for somebody to suddenly be that intelligent, especially when you're used to being dumb most of the time. So here we go. I'm going to scroll down the chapter. You can see Bert going through town and thinking about these things. And his thoughts are getting a little deeper. The types of words I'm using in his internal monologue are changing, but notice that his dialogue stays the same. That's intentional. Bert will keep talking like Bert even though he is super intelligent because it's a habit. It's how he learned to speak. But over time, I may change that as well. Initially, though, you can see tons of thoughts going on in his head, but on the page, it looks like he's still the same old, not terribly bright Bert. He makes it back to the slug. The slug says he's still interested in the deal. Bert brings some strawberries that he acquired in the last chapter and trades them to the slug, and the slug delivers, gives him some information, tells him that they can sneak in through the moat. There is a grate. If they can find a way to unlock it, they can get through that grate and sneak up through the sewer into the Tomb of Deadly Death, where they can overthrow White without him knowing that they're there. So Bert gets the information. He rewards the slug with the strawberries. They part rather as friends. Bert heads back to meet with Kit. So in the next chapter, this one did have a name, Suspicious Rogue. They need to find somebody to open the grate. And it's got to be a rogue because they need lockpicking. So the slug gave them a tip and told them that there is a suspicious rogue who's been hanging out in this inn, and he's heard lots of rumors as people were crossing the bridge, so maybe they can investigate there. So Kit and Bert head that way. Bert sits on Kit's shoulder so, he can whisper stuff in her ear and kind of help her out. She goes into this inn, and they do manage to track down this suspicious rogue who they identify because she has a suspicious rogue trope. They point at the trope, it's a whole thing. And then the joke here, and we'll see if this stays, is that she is a were-cougar, their rogue that they're picking up. And I made her a cougar in the double entendre sense. She's maybe, pushing 50 and still very attractive and still flirting with the younger men. So I made her a cougar in that regard too. And you can see how this plays out in the chapter. This is meant to be kind of funny, but also advancing the plot. I am learning as I go on that I think I want the humor to be more understated, and some of the more egregious parts will be edited out, but the core of it will stay. So I've tried some experiments here that I feel fell flat in the writing, but in the editing section, we'll take some of that stuff out and you'll get to see sort of how I make those decisions. Anyway, we are reaching the end of this chapter, and we've met our suspicious rogue, and we find out her name is Sharon Rock, which may or may not be an allusion to Sharon Stone because she is an older blonde woman who's still very attractive. Yeah, that's the end of that chapter. They've now got their suspicious rogue so they can get into the moat. That is the last chapter I wrote for today. And basically, they sneak through the moat. They get attacked by a monster, a tentacle monster that White left behind in the moat. And we see Bert use his powers for the first time, uses Dominate Monster, makes it go away. And then they successfully get into the sewage drain system for the Tomb of Deadly Death by the end. And that was the last chapter that I wrote for the day. So scrolling through, you can see how that played out. This one went pretty well. I enjoyed writing it. It's fun having Bert have power for the first time and getting to see how that affects his mindset as he's starting to realize, wait, I can affect the outcome of things. I don't have to run away. So you can see here, bad monster. No, bad. Monster, start grabbing people. So this is Bert telling the monster to run away. Anyway, that's pretty much all of what I did today. I've got probably 3 more main chapters in the plot. They're going to break inside and confront White, obviously. And then I've got my epilogue chapter. So maybe total 4 or 5 more chapters. It's possible, guys, I could finish this today. That would be on day 9, which would be 1 full day ahead of schedule. Worst case scenario, if I brainstorm some more chapters, I should be able to still finish this by Friday on day 10. But I'd love to finish this tomorrow and have the first draft completed in 9 days. And I'm very proud that we're getting to the end of National Novel Writing Month, November 30th. I didn't start until November 19th, and I still won. or I'm still going to win, it looks like. So pretty excited there. Anyway, guys, I'm going to go ahead and get back to the writing, and we'll jump into the next segment. Okay, so we have reached the end of day 9, and this draft is just about finished. Today didn't go very well at all in terms of overall word count. As you can see, for the first time, I didn't really hit my goal. I'm behind by about 1,700 words. And I only did 3 sprints. So you see one was 687 words, one was 790, and then I've got that one that was 1653. I was really struggling with the chapters today, and I knew that I could finish it, but I also felt like doing so would result in maybe some poorly written chapters. Like I was kind of trying to power through it and not really feeling it. So I slowed down and I took some time to define these chapters very carefully, and that helped to sort of unpack them. And then I also plotted out the rest of the book so that I'm pretty much good to go. So what I did today was the plan, bad kitties, and take down break stuff. In the plan, they're basically climbing out of the sewer and they're trying to figure out, okay, where are we and what are we going to do? So they realize they're very close to the Adoramancer, Ramen Brotep, and they send or decide that they're going to send Bert to maybe stop him. But as they're doing that, we get to see a little bit more magic. They use a prestidigitation spell to clean themselves of the funk that they swam through and get cleaned up and sort of think about what they're going to do. And then at the end of the chapter, Bert is on his way. So it's super short. I'll probably flesh it out, make it a little bit longer in the edit, but it doesn't need a lot more than what it has. Next chapter, Bert is going to find the Adoramancer. He's a little bit scared because, this is kind of a big responsibility. And he enters the room and finds that Ramen Brotep is actually playing with toy dinosaurs. So you can see how I build up to this, where you hear roaring happening. And it's not clear to you, the reader, whether or not Bert's going to be in real trouble. Is it a dragon we're seeing? We're not really sure. And then he comes around the corner and sees that it's actually just the mummy playing with toys, and it's not really a threat at all. So I'm hoping that'll come across as funny to readers. But of course, Bert is easily able to get Brotep to work with him. Brotep recognizes him as a Dark Lord and is happy that he's going to be removing white. And so he signs up and agrees to free crotch shots, so they'll have an archer to help them with the end of the book. Next chapter, they actually are going to take down Break Stuff the Dwarf Paladin. And you can see, I kind of, riffed a little bit off of Empire Strikes Back with the Carbonite freezing with Han Solo. And we get Crotchshot waking up. He's still got a little bit of granite sickness, I called it, instead of carbonite sickness. But by the time he gets into a position where he has to fight, he's ready to go. They make it to the dwarf's room. They ambush the dwarf. He fights back, but he's badly outnumbered. And so they do manage to subdue and kill Break Stuff. And yeah, I'm going to scroll down so you guys can see how that plays out. And this is the last step before we get to the end of the book. So the end of the book really is that climactic battle that I'm talking about. We're going to have everybody engage, and you're going to get to see hopefully a funny combat where, it's, action-packed and exciting, but also some amusing stuff is happening. And I got to be honest, I just didn't feel ready to write that today. Like, I could have finished the book today, but I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll sleep on it. Tomorrow morning, I'll come back and I'll write these last couple of chapters. I've got 3 more, as you can see. You've got my climactic battle where Kit launches the assault and they try and things are going badly, and then we get our darkest moment. And then, of course, Bert's going to come in and save the day, and that's basically the ending. And then we have the You Can't Go Home Again, just a brief chapter of him and his new role as the Dark Lord. And that's it. First draft is done. So I will be finishing that tomorrow. This will be the last update for this particular video. Yeah, wow, I can't believe we're already at the end of another week. So first draft is just about finished. We're pretty much on track. Wow, has it been a crazy week. And kudos to you to make it to the end of this video. I know it's pretty long. And I'm exhausted, man. It is 7 p.m. at night, and I've been working pretty much all day. So I am going to take a step back and maybe relax for the rest of the week. Wouldn't that be nice? Freudian slip. I'm going to relax for the rest of the evening maybe, and then tomorrow morning I'll bang out the rest of this book. But there you have it, guys. We have just about finished this first draft. There's just a couple thousand more words and we're finished. I am on track to have this book done, and the next video that you will see is going to cover the editing. So if you have questions about the editing or how I'm going to take what you've seen here in the creation of this first draft and turn it into a final novel, please feel free to ask that in the comments. If there is anything else that you want to see or know or are curious about, then the more you can tell me about that, easier it is for me to come up with answers for you. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for being along for the ride. I do need to get back to the writing, and I'm going to go do that now. So I will see you next week.